Hey everybody, it's Felicia Stitzel with Vintage Wine Marketing, and welcome to today's Wine Wednesday. Today I'm going to debunk a few myths that surround digital advertising. From some of the most common ways of thinking when you talk about digital marketing to some of the more recent conversations that I've had with other businesses. So there are a lot of myths that surround digital marketing just because everybody has their own idea of what's right, what's wrong, and not to say that anybody particularly calling out names is wrong, but I think it really has to do with what you're doing it for. Every industry has a right and wrong way of doing things. And what I've come to notice is that when people try to blanket every single industry with one particular way of doing things, that's when these myths start actually coming true. So we're going to debunk a couple of those myths. Now, there's a lot of them, so we're only going to go over 5. So the very first one is all conversations are good conversations. Now, we've been talking about conversations a lot lately because I love having conversations with people. And I think that it's really important to have conversations, especially as a business and as a winery, because that is where marketing is going to. It's not about putting an ad in a newspaper. It's about having a conversation with your customers. But there is another side to that, and that is everybody thinks that every conversation that you have is a good conversation. So let's put that into context. Let's say a debt collector calls you. Is that going to be a good conversation? Are you going to enjoy that conversation or look forward to it? Probably not. It's just to be safe. So that's a good example, is to say that is not a good conversation. If somebody is the telemarketers that used to call my house back in the day, us kids would play the worst pranks on telemarketers when we were kids. But that was a sales call. That was something that a company was hired to sell over the phone this particular product. Generally, that's not going to be a good conversation either, because most of the time people get hung up on or get cursed out or don't answer the phone at all. So that's not a good conversation. The same thing applies when you're doing digital marketing and you are wanting to instigate a conversation. The reason why that there is a bad conversation when it comes to digital marketing is because, let's say, as a winery, you are trying to promote your wine event that's coming up this summer. You want to start building the hype for it now, even though if you're like most of the country, you're still covered in snow. You want to start building up that anticipation for that event now. Well, if you are targeting somebody who doesn't live close to you, isn't planning on traveling to you, and doesn't like wine, that would be a bad conversation. Because then to that person, that is just spam. So it doesn't matter to them. That's not a constructive, good conversation. But if you are targeting somebody who loves going to wine events, is planning a summer trip to you, because remember, Facebook knows all that, and Instagram especially knows that, they're planning on traveling to you, or they live close by. All of those factors, and of course, you have to get the last one, they love wine. Of course, that is going to be a good conversation, because now you are engaging with them, you're enticing them, you are building up that anticipation for that event. So that is a good conversation. Second myth, that all ads are disruptive and spammy. Now, if you ask my husband, this myth is absolutely true. But the reason why that is because all the things that he's getting hit with, all the ads, they are spam to him, because these are not things that he is interested in, but he is being targeted and retargeted because he is a male in a certain age demographic that lives in a certain area. So he's getting targeted for things that he is not even interested in because they did a bad set for their target. They weren't detailed enough. They just wanted to throw out a blanket and see how many people they could catch. So if you're my husband, you will say that all ads are spammy. But that is a myth. And the reason why that is a myth is because it comes down to having quality ads. You don't just want to throw something up there and put a bunch of money behind it and hope that it works. That is when you can get really spammy. So you want to have high quality and informative advertising. You want it to be engaging and eye-catching, and you want it to be relevant to the person that you're sending it out to. So that is why this is a myth, because not all ads are spam. Now, I can say for sure, I have been spammed by people who are just blanket throwing out ads. And as a marketer, I can identify that. But a lot of people, they're just like, oh no, all ads are bad. Nobody likes ads. They're terrible. They're going to be bad for my business. And that is because they have seen the worst effect of a bad ad. So when you are putting ads together, make sure that you are doing quality. It's like quality versus quantity. You don't want to throw out a bunch of ads that are just bad, but you're throwing them out anyways because you know, as we've talked about, you know that you need to have that consistency. But throwing something bad together and putting money behind it isn't going to be profitable for you. You're just going to waste money. And then you're going to end up having a bad rapport with people who could have been your customers. So that's myth number 2. Myth number 3. Myth number 3, I have had a lot of conversations about because this is a very common myth. And that is ads are for sale prospects only. Now that's not true. We've talked about this during our Wine Wednesdays. Is that they don't have to just be making a sale. They could be engaging. They could be informative. They could be introducing yourself. They could be hundreds of thousands of different things. They could be whatever you want it to be. But it doesn't always have to be a sales pitch. You don't always have to be selling something if you're putting an ad together. You could be informing the general public that you as a winery exist, especially in places that are heavily inundated with wineries. I was on a webinar with Ving Direct a couple weeks ago, and they were talking about how the best thing that you can do is to drive traffic using your social media sites to your tasting room and let the tasting room attendants take care of the rest, because that's what they're trained to do. So when you're putting an ad together, you don't have to be making a sale. You can just be telling them that you exist, start acquainting them with your brand and with your wine, and encourage them to come out and visit you because they won't regret it. And they will want to come back again and again because of that first ad. So that's myth number 3. Don't always think that just because you're putting an ad together and you're spending money to promote that ad, that you have to make a sale off of it. It's ideal, but you don't have to be selling something in the ad. Let's just bracket that one. You do not have to sell something in your ad. Remember, there are lots of different kinds of advertising out there. And the best ones that especially work for wineries are ones that engage, educate, and drive traffic to your tasting room. Those are the best ones for wineries because they have been proven to work. All right, myth number 4. And this one, I can't even tell you how many conversations I've had. And this is valid, but remember that especially with advertising and especially in the wine industry, you have to pair things together. It's like the Wine Wednesday when I introduce you to my friend Sam, sales and marketing. This ties in with that perfectly. So, myth number 4, that all of your digital ads should be directing traffic towards your website. Remember, underlining should be. And I'm going to tell you right now, that is absolutely not true. That is why that is a big myth right there. Because it's just simply not true. And the reason why it's not true is because of somebody who has no idea about who you are, what your wine is, your history, your family, your vineyards, whatever it is that makes you as a winery unique. Because you all are. Every single winery that I have ever been to, I know without a shadow of a doubt that that winery is going to be completely different from the one I might have visited just up the road 20 minutes prior. Every winery is unique. So what's the reason? Why are you unique? What makes you special and stand out against all of your competitors next to you? So this is a half myth. And the reason why it's a half myth is because you can drive traffic to your website and you can drive traffic to make a sale off of your website. Absolutely. But they have to be familiar with you first. So people who already know you, your wine club members, your email lists, people who already are engaged with you on social media sites, you can run an ad to them and have them, and direct that ad towards your winery website. And that would work. But they have to be familiar with you first. So somebody who has no idea who you are and what your wine is, and then you try and make a sale off of your website, wouldn't recommend it. So this is why I say that it's a half myth, because there's two sides to that pancake. And the very last myth, myth number 5. I'm going to say that this is probably the greatest myth, which is why I saved it for last. This is the greatest myth I have ever heard, because it is something that I come into contact with in a conversation I have all the time. And that is, digital advertising is going to guarantee instant results for your company. No. And the reason why I say no is because advertising, marketing, sales, reputations, all of these things that go into your company, it takes time. And this is a really hard thing for a lot of people to grasp, because in this day and age, society is such an instant, they want instant results. It's that instant gratification. But when it comes to sales and marketing, especially when you pair those two together with my good friend Sam, you have to know that this is something that takes time. That's why when you go to marketing agencies, they have you sign a 3, 6, or 1 year long contract with them, because they know that it takes time to generate results. But once you start generating results, it becomes a snowball effect, and everything just starts gathering up and gathering momentum. And then you've got really good long-term results. Instant results and your long-term gratification. Big difference. So this is why myth number 5 is one that I really wanted to make sure that you guys understood, because if you run an ad, and this happened, if you run an ad for 3 weeks and then don't do anything, no follow-up, no nothing, and you just drop it because it didn't work, it will continue not working if that's your strategy. You need to have long-term things in place. You need to have that consistency, like we talked about weeks ago. You need to have that consistency. And it does take time. It takes time for your audience to build, your algorithms to get into place. It takes time for people to start generating those sales. Everything, it takes time. But if you have a good marketing plan in place, if you have good consistency where you know that there is a portion of your budget that is going to be invested back into your winery to drive traffic to your winery, that is when you're going to start seeing results, and that is when it's going to sustain you for the long run. Like I said earlier, that webinar where I was on with VingDirect, they were talking about how statistically they have seen more sales are being made when wineries are using social media to drive traffic to the tasting room, and the tasting room attendants close a sale. That is why social media is so successful, is when you use it as a tool and you don't use it as a crutch, but you have to use it. All the big dogs are even saying it. You have to use social media, and you have to use social media marketing, because that's where your audiences are. And we've talked about this with using email, direct mail pieces, with social media, with messenger bots, with all these different things. You can have all of these different stair-step systems in place for your marketing, but you have to make sure it's in place. So, like I said, there are a ton of myths out there, a ton of myths. And I could probably spend a week going over all of them and why they're myths or why they're partial myths. But I'm just going to go over the top 5 right now, because I know you guys are all busy, and I really appreciate that you guys spend a couple minutes of your day with me on Wednesdays once a week. So I hope that you guys got something out of this. And if you have any questions about this, or you want to start implementing something so that way you know that your ads are actually working and that you're going to have that longevity that we just talked about for myth number 5, reach out to me. Send me an email, text, call. I would love to be able to help you out with creating a plan that is going to sustain you long term. And if you need help implementing it, let me know. I can help you train up your staff, or I can do it for you. One of the two, but I just want to see that wineries as a whole, as the industry, that we are all rising in this floating tide together, because I believe that this is a fantastic industry and that this is something that needs to be shared, and that if we all start succeeding, then we are all going to be able to raise up our overall quantity and the quality of the wines within the industry in the United States. So thank you for joining me on this week's Wine Wednesday. Be sure to tune in next week for more tips and tricks of the trade. I'll catch you guys later.